They collected us before dawn, when the light became nonetheless a pallid smear crawling across the horizon, while even the air appeared reluctant to upward thrust from its shut eye. The sky above the motor yard changed into the coloration of old parchment, veined with smoke, and the floor underneath our boots became slick with oil and sanctified spillage gadget blood, they called it. We stood in ranks among the looming types of the armored beasts that could carry us to glory or to damnation. Most folks already knew which. The air tasted of burnt incense and ozone, of sanctified oils that the tech monks had poured over the tanks inside the night, whispering their liddies in Benharic tongues we could not understand. The echoes nevertheless clung to the metal, vibrating faintly like the aftertaste of a prayer half-heard. Our sergeant, a man whose face was greater scar than skin, barked us into stillness. His bionic eye glowed faintly, reflecting the sunrise's susceptible mild like a heretic's lantern. "On your knees," he said. "You kneel not earlier than the flesh, however earlier than the throne." We obeyed. The ground changed into bloodless, seeping through the thin material of our fatigues. A dozen tanks loomed before us, hulks of sanctified iron, their hulls etched with the aquila, with prayers and benedictions scrolled in gadget script. I bear in mind the one that would be ours, a squat, brutal engine of religion and fury. Its armor changed into pitted, layered in rust like scabbed flesh, and alongside its flank ran the names of folks who had died inside it. There had been many. A number of the letters were worn smooth by using time. The tech priest approached, his gowns dragging throughout the ground with the whisper of cables on stone. His face was a patchwork of flesh and bronze. His mouth a superb from which steam hissed with every syllable. In one mechanical hand, he held a censer that spilled fragrant smoke. MYRR perhaps, or the burnt remains of some thing once holy. He started out the litany of bonding, his voice a metal dirge. "Steel be thy flesh, wool be thy blood, faith be thy ignition, fury thy fuel. Recognize that thy soul is now not thine very own. It's far grafted to the engine of his will." As he spoke, the sergeant passed alongside the oath slates, thin metallic pills engraved with the emperor's image. We pressed our thumbs to the icons, and blood welled up, drawn by way of the slate's sharp edge. Our blood became our seal. Our obedience became our lifestyles. Whilst it came to me, I hesitated only a breath. The slate felt heat, almost pulsing. I pressed my thumb down until I felt the edge and watched a bead of red spread throughout the sigil. The tech priest's gaze discovered me then, lenses worrying as they focused. "Blessed be the imparting," he rasped, voice like grinding gears. "The system liquids and remembers." We have been told the emperor himself watched as we took the oath. I did no longer consider that then, nonetheless do not. But I don't forget how the light broke across the tanks, scattering into shards of gold, and how the smoke curled upward like souls ascending. For a moment, I nearly felt something divine within the air. Nearly. Then came the touch of metal. The sergeant motioned us forward one after the other to lay our fingers upon the hull of the beast that could be our domestic. I stepped toward it, feeling the tremor of the device beneath the steel, a few internal rhythm, a sluggish pulse. The air around it was hotter, alive by hook or by crook. I positioned my palm in opposition to the aquila carved into its flank. The steel was bloodless in the beginning, then warmer, as though the tank drew warmness from my hand. The rims of the engraving had been sharp, biting into my flesh. I traced the twin-headed eagle with my fingertips, feeling the gouges, the repairs, the layers of paint, and sanctified sealant that marked its records. The floor vibrated faintly, not from the wind, however from something deeper, like a heartbeat muffled through armor. "I name you Penance," the sergeant stated, his voice echoing through the yard. "For all who input you shall pay their due." A murmur of approval rose many of the crew. I tasted rust on my tongue. The tech priest prolonged his McKendrite and marked the tank's prow with a line of sacred oil. "She is bound," he ended. "Spirit and crew, one in servitude. May also the gadget's spirit be merciful." That turned into the primary time I heard the time period machine spirit spoken as although it had been alive, aware. I might come to learn that it become each much less and far greater than that. After the rites, we have been made to repeat the oath of metallic. It turned into long, full of historical phrases, maximum of which none folks understood. However, we knew that means in the back of them. Obedience, sacrifice, silence. I'm the flesh that feeds the furnace. I am the breath that stirs the pistons. I'm the faith that ignites the engine. My life is certain to the hull, my death to its glory. Through steel, I bear. Through flame, I'm redeemed. Whilst the final phrase left my lips, I felt something near over me like a lid being sealed. Look forward to, invisible, but absolute. That changed into the moment I ceased to be a man. I became an aspect. We celebrated that night time with what surpassed for rations. Grain bricks softened with recycled water and a skinny smear of nutrient paste that tasted of copper and incense. The sergeant allowed us half of a measure of a marsec, each a rare generosity. We drank in silence underneath the tank's shadow. The manner penitents may pray underneath a relic. Our motive force, Karen, was a broad man with the construct of a forge employee and the eyes of a person who'd already familiar his dying. He ran a hand along the music hyperlinks, feeling for imperfections. She's antique, he stated quietly. Older than the regiment. Older than your faith, muttered Sooth the gunner. He spat onto the ground. You can pay attention her hum when the wind's right. Like she's dreaming. Our loader actual gave a low giggle. Dreaming of what? Blood or glory? So shrugged. Identical thing. I did not speak. I used to be nevertheless paying attention to the faint creak of metallic cooling, to the low moan of the wind as it passed via the exhaust vents. Somewhere deep within the hull, something clicked like equipment moving on its own. She's hungry, Karen stated nearly reverently. The sergeant's shadow fell over us. Then feed her properly, he said. The next day, she beverages the Sunday. I didn't sleep that night time. The barracks stank of sweat and oil, of sanctified incense that clung to the whole thing like guilt. The walls have been skinny, and through them I should hear the distant clatter of tech priests operating through the darkish hours, reciting their prayers as they anointed each equipment and piston. The sound reminded me of bugs crawling inside steel bones. Once I subsequently closed my eyes, I dreamed of the tank now not as a device, but as something dwelling. Its hull was flesh, its coronary heart an engine that throbbed with molten blood. I stood internal and entombed, while it whispered in a voice like shifting sand, "Serve and be forgotten." I woke with the flavor of iron in my mouth. At dawn, the sirens called us to the yard all over again. The mild was harsher this time, reducing through the haze like a blade. The tech priest was long gone, replaced by using his acolytes, who moved like ghosts between the rows of machines. The sergeant stood earlier than us, his expression carved from stone. Crew penance, mount up. The hatch yawned open with a hiss of pressurized air. I stuck the primary whiff of the inner. Hot steel, burnt oil, stale breath from crews long lifeless. The stench became thick, oppressive. One after the other, we climbed interior. The instant I crossed the threshold, the mild dimmed, changed by the amber glow of lumen strips. The air turned into heavy, close. The sound of my own respiration echoed off the walls. The walls themselves have been alive with inscriptions, sigils of protection, fragments of scripture etched into the plating. Someone had scratched phrases into the steel above the loader's station. Metallic recollects. Karen settled into the driving force's seat, his fingers tracing the controls like a clergyman managing relics. SH took his place at the gunner's points of interest, muttering a quick prayer. Reel stowed the shells, each one marked with purity seals. I discovered my station close to the Vox panel, in which static whispered continuously like a voice just beyond hearing. The sergeant climbed in last, sealing the hatch at the back of him with a grinding twist. The sound echoed like a tomb closing. In that second, I understood what he intended whilst he stated we were entombed, but blessed. The air becomes skinny, the light dim, the steel warm round us. It felt like being swallowed by way of something significant and affected person. The sergeant's voice got here through the intercom, calm however absolute. Remember your oaths. The Emperor sees through the eyes of iron. There may be no fear within metal. We repeated the word in unison. There may be no fear within metal. However I felt it there below the rhythm of the engine. Below the scent of oil and sanctity, the metallic had its personal starvation, its very own pulse, and deep down I knew it might drink earlier than the campaign's stop. They sealed us inside the tank at the beginning light. The hatch clanged close with a sound that regarded to echo through my ribs. The air modified at once thicker, recycled, touched with a touch of oil, and the faint sweetness of the incense that were burned to plate the system spirit. It was the scent of devotion and confinement blended as one. The sector out of doors vanished, replaced by using a womb of iron. The inner lamps glowed a dull amber, casting the compartment in choppy halos of mild. Dust motes danced inside the nonetheless air, floating among us like tiny prayers that might by no means attain the Emperor. I may want to feel the hull urgent in opposition to me from all sides. There was no actual area to move, only the slender compartments that defined our roles. Karen hunched at the motive force's seat, shoulders brushing the metallic bulkhead. S leaned forward into the gunner's cradle, his eye already pressed in opposition to the scope. Rill crouched beside the loader's rack, resting his hand on the casing of the closest shell, as although drawing consolation from its cold promise. I sat at the Vox console, my responsibility to commune with the unseen voices that ruled our lives. Static whispered from the grill, a stressed sigh that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the engine's idle thrum. For the primary hour, none people spoke. The sergeant had forbidden idle chatter. Silence became the first discipline of the armored corps. He said words were like sparks too many, and something could burn that wasn't supposed to. Alternatively, we listened to the constant pulse of the cooling gadget, to the grind of the suspension underneath us, to the faint drip of condensation going for walks down an unseen pipe. The device breathed around us, a deep mechanical respiration. The hull flexed every now and then with a valid like bones settling. So, broke the silence first. You pay attention that. Karen grunted. Hear what? That sound like? He paused, listening like it's whispering. This is the air circulator, Reel said, his tone half bored. You want silence? Go die out of doors. You may listen plenty of it there. S gave a dry snicker. I might take that offer at some point. The sergeant didn't hassle reprimanding him. He became observing the coetator shrine welded near the primary turret column. A small alcove of brass and steel adorned with purity seals, tiny votive candles, and a pudding icon of the Emperor carved in comfort. Its surface became blackened from years of smoke. Above it, in stenciled letters, a person lengthy ago had painted, "Serve unto rust." The sergeant muttered a quick benediction beneath his breath. By oil and fireplace, by religion and flesh. His gauntlet touched the icon in brief, a gesture as automated as respiratory. Every tank had its shrine, and every crew discovered speedy that to neglect it become to ask catastrophe. The machine's spirit turned into temperamental, effortlessly angered. In case you forgot to mild incense earlier than ignition, it might stall. Fail to recite the littiness of movement, and the gears might capture mid-battle. There had been tales of tanks that grew to become their guns upon their very own crews after blasphemy. I did not trust them then. However, the more hours we spent interior, the greater I began to experience the presence at the back of the rituals, no longer divine, however watchful. As though the tank knew, time became a blur inside the hull. The absence of herbal mile dissolved the feel of hours. We measured existence in engine cycles, gas readings, and the sluggish rhythm of our breath. Karen murmured to himself as he adjusted the pressure levers. His arms had been steady, however his lips moved continuously, repeating fragments of the driving force's can. Blessed be the piston, blessed be the tune. Can also the street unfold in obedience underneath me? The sound had become a mantra that crammed the cramped area, mingling with the hum of the electricity unit. By noon, the warmth commenced to upward thrust. The vents pushed out air thick with gadget musk and recycled sweat. Every breath felt heavier, as though the tank was exhaling into our lungs as opposed to the other way around. The metal beneath my hands grew warm, almost alive. Feels like she's sweating, Actual muttered, wiping his brow. She's just being used to you, Karen replied with a faint grin. South snorted. You watch she likes us? She'll like what the Emperor instructions her to like, said the sergeant flatly. Display her devotion and she'll serve. Doubt and she or he'll make you pay for it. We fell quiet again. Somewhere deep within the tank, the coolant machine kicked on a low growl that vibrated through the floor and up our spines. I felt my teeth pain from the resonance. That night time, or what exceeded for it, we ate our rations cold protein paste squeezed from a tube, washed down with metal water. We ate in shifts, so someone usually stored watch at the systems. The sergeant said the machine's spirit disliked inattentive crew. As I chewed, I studied the flickering gauges. One dial trembled slightly, the needle quivering just below the purple line. "Driver, your coolant pressure's high." Karen glanced on the dial and frowned. "Should not be. Have not pushed her butt." The sergeant moved closer, checking the valve. "Pray more difficult then." Karen nodded and whispered any other verse of the can. The gauge steadied slowly as though soothed with the aid of his faith. That became when I began to understand what it meant to stay in. It wasn't simply the partitions or the heat or the recycled air. It became the sluggish cognizance that the tank had moods and that our survival depended on appeasing them. The primary time we ran a systems test, the roar almost deafened me. The engine ignited with a shudder that shook the whole hull. The noise was a dwelling thing, an unbroken scream of power and fury that drowned out notion itself. "Saints preserve us," Rilem muttered. "She's irritated." "No longer irritated," stated Karen. "Conscious." We started out the ritual of ignition. Then, each folks reciting our components and flip. By means of the Omnisia's spark, wake up. By way of the Emperor's will, obey. Via the faith of the group, undergo. The sergeant's voice carried above the din. Steel is fact. Flesh is weak spot. Obedience is survival. While the words ended, the roar settled right into a low, constant rhythm. The lighting brightened. I felt the vibration of the tracks interact underneath us. A pulse that traveled up via the soles of my boots into my bones. We commenced to transport. The first motion became continually the strangest, like being born into movement. After hours of stillness, the partitions seemed to shift, the ground tilting slightly as the suspension adjusted. I gripped the Vox cope to steady myself. "Throttle." "Constant," said the sergeant. Karen spoke back with a grunt. "Throttle steady." The machine rumbled forward, treads grinding in opposition to the ferrocrete of the motor yard. The sound became deafening, the vibrations constant. Dust drifted from the ceiling in lazy spirals. We rolled for what felt like hours, even though it would have been much less. The only view of the outside came through the commander's periscope, a narrow slit of distorted light. The entirety else became metal, shadow, and heat. So no one is out, firing parameters at random, practicing. The clicking of the elevation gears changed into rhythmic, hypnotic. I discovered myself mouthing prayers without realizing it, the phrases spilling out as clearly as respiration. The tank had a manner of drawing them from you, as even though it demanded verbal proof of religion. Later, while the engine cooled and the hum dwindled, we sat within the dimness, paying attention to the faint crackle of the Vox. The static every so often shaped shapes of sound, half of voices, whispers. Once I heard a phrase buried within it. "Do you hear us?" I iced up. "A person on the line?" asked the sergeant. "No, sir," I stated quick. "Simply interference." He gave a protracted, measured appearance. "Don't let the ghost communicate to you, trooper. That's how guys cross mad and metal." "Sure, sir, but I may want to nevertheless hear it." The faint echo, like respiration through damaged glass. By way of the 1/3 day, the air filters had taken at the bitter stink of sweat and oil. The sergeant rationed our incense, burning most effective a pinch earlier than ignition. The smoke coiled via the cramped area, clinging to our uniforms and combining with the tang of machine grease. Each floor turned into slick to the touch condensation from our breath, collecting on the bloodless metallic, then strolling down in thin, greasy lines. Sleep got here in fragments. I would drift off sitting upright, my head knocking softly against the Vox unit. Desires bled into waking moments till I could not tell the distinction. In those half of sleeps, I'd hear the tank murmuring gentle steel sighs, phrases shaped from the creak of rivets and the heartbeat of the coolant lines. It didn't talk like a man. It spoke like a hurricane at the back of partitions. Once, for the duration of an extended idle, Soth started tapping his palms at the barrel housing in rhythm with the engine. The sound resonated unusually. "Prevent that," said the sergeant sharply. So I iced over. "Why?" "She doesn't like rhythm unless it is hers," the sergeant spoke back. "You'll confuse her." All of us fell silent. It became then that I understood absolutely. The gadget wasn't simply ours to command. It became a god of its very own type, a caged deity of iron and oil, and we had been its clergymen, constrained in its belly, feeding it prayers and sweat. By the give up of that first week, we spoke much less and less. Language became needless. We found out to communicate in gestures, nods, shared glances. Every motion became reasonably priced. Every breath turned into rationed. Sometimes I notioned I should sense my heart sinking to the heartbeat of the engine. And at night time, while the lamps dimmed and the hull cooled, I might take a seat by using the shrine and whisper to the icon of the Emperor. However, I used to be not positive which god I was praying to, the only on the throne or the only fabricated from metallic round me. The answer, I suppose, became each. The first struggle came earlier than sunrise, although dawn in no way in reality broke. Most effective, a pale imitation of mild crawling through a sky already ruined with the aid of ash. We had been wakened by using the siren's wail, a rising metallic scream that crammed the barracks and rattled the loose plates on the walls. The sound of battle is never smooth. It starts off evolved like sickness, sluggish, suffocating, inevitable. "Mount up," the sergeant barked. "Saints, guide your arms, or the machine will no longer." We obeyed as always. Obedience was survival, and survival, they instructed us, changed into the Emperor's will. The tank's hatch closed above us with a convincing clang, sealing us far away from the arena yet again. The air inside became damp and stifling, already alive with the scent of heated oil. The ignition rites have been achieved inside the night, but nevertheless Karen whispered the litany of movement under his breath. The others observed in murmurs, a refrain of religion for the god that become our struggle engine. I did not pray. I definitely listened to the growl of the engine, to the hiss of hydraulics waking like sinew, to the faint heartbeat of the hull underneath my arms. While the order got here through the Vox strengthened, the system replied with a roar that drowned out every human voice. The vibration tore through the soles of my boots, up my backbone, until my enamel ached. We lurched ahead, treads biting into the earth. Outside, the floor trembled below our weight. Karen guided us through the haze. His hands had been sure, his eyes half of lit in concentration. Throttle consistent, he muttered. "Less stress, less track." His phrases were like a hymn swallowed by way of the growl of the pressure motor. Through the periscope slit, I noticed only fragments, a horizon painted in fireplace. Silhouettes of tanks moving like black phantoms through the smoke. Beyond them, artillery flares bloomed like diseased suns. The Vox crackled in my ear, one half orders, one half prayers, and limitless flow of voices, all pleading to the same indifferent god. Hold formation, came a voice, distant, steel. Emperor publications, fireplace while the order comes. The sergeant's reply turned into a curt click on. We rolled onward. The sound in the tank grew insufferable. The roar of the engine merged with the scream of the gears, with the consistent thump of the tracks crushing particles. Every vibration had become a 2D heartbeat in my chest. The air rire of heated steel and system oil so thick it covered the tongue. S crouched at the sights, his face lit through the flickering, inexperienced glow of the targeting OPEX. "Rangefinder locked," he said, voice tight. "Goals ahead. Trench line, maybe 200 m." The sergeant leaned over him. "Affirm." I affirm. "Then burn them." S's hand hovered over the trigger room. For a moment, I noticed hesitation in his eyes. Then the rune flared purple beneath his touch. The world detonated. The cannon's recoil changed into a physical factor, a sledgehammer blow through the hull. I felt it in my bones, a shudder that stripped all thought away. My ears rang, my imaginative and prescient blurred. The thunderclap of the shot became followed with the aid of a second sound. Something remote, human. Screams, faint and quick, smothered with the aid of the machine's roar, are changed into already reloading. His movements have been mechanical, practiced. He slammed every other shell into the breech, wiped his hands, and muttered the prayer of the second chamber. The sergeant's voice changed into calm. Fire once more, we obeyed. Shot after shot, effect after effect. The odor of propellant crammed the compartment, sharp and chemical, burning the throat. The partitions grew warm underneath our fingers, as even though the tank itself drank the heat and fed on it. Outdoor, the sky pulsed with flashes of orange and white, each one a short imitation of the Sunday. Through the periscope, I noticed them shapes within the smoke, strolling, falling, burning. They seemed small, almost insect-like, before they vanished inside the next explosion. I could not see their faces, best the outlines of their deaths. It changed into overspeeding. Battles usually are, as a minimum for those who live through them. Time stretches within the tank, However, out of doors, the whole thing ends in seconds. The silence that accompanied became worse than the noise. The air turned into thick with the stink of warm brass and burnt oil. Sweat ran down our necks, pooling below our collars. The only sound turned into the faint hiss of cooling steel. "Faint," stated the sergeant. "All structures inexperienced," Karen replied routinely. "Ammo stable, no hollow. Breach." So said not anything. He became staring through the scope, unmoving. "Gunner," stated the sergeant. "File." So failed to turn. They failed to even run. He whispered. "They just seemed up." The sergeant located a gloved hand on his shoulder. "Do no longer look back, Soth. That's the primary rule. You serve the Emperor, not the lifeless." Estich nodded slowly, but I noticed his fingers tremble. We have been ordered to maintain position at the same time as the line advanced. The engine idled, growling softly under us. Through the hull, I should feel the faint tremors of distant bombardment. Each vibration becomes some other existence extinguished. Another victory we'd never see. I found myself observing the shrine once more. The candles had melted right down to blackened stubs. The brass icon changed into warm to the touch. I puzzled what number of crews had prayed to it earlier than us. What number of names had burned away into the metal. Ours surpassed in silence. While the solar or what handed for it subsequently broke by the haze, it became crimson. The arena outdoor glowed as though submerged in blood. Karen killed the engine, and the unexpected quiet made my ears ring. Without the roar, the tank felt empty, like a corpse without breath. The sergeant ultimately spoke. "Dismount check." We obeyed, starting the hatch with a hiss of pressurized air. The primary breath of outdoors hit me like a slap. It reeked of cordite and charred soil. But it was real. I climbed out into the mild and seamed round. The battlefield stretched forever and ever. Blackened earth, twisted wrecks, and trenches decreased to mud-filled scars. The air shimmered with heat and smoke. In the distance, I saw motion medicate servitors dragging bodies into piles, marking them with wax seals for identification that could never come. The ground beneath my boots turned into soft. I looked down and noticed why. Ash, and something darker mixed with it. I turned away quick. Rel joined me, wiping filth from his face. His eyes were hollow. "You sent it?" "Yes, burnt meat," he stated flatly. "Identical as each warfare I have visible. Flesh usually smells the identical while it dies." Sol climbed out final, his gaze fixed at the horizon. We failed to even see their faces. The sergeant's voice got here from under. "That's mercy. The Emperor spares you the load of popularity." He emerged, lighting a fresh stick of incense and protecting it earlier than the tank's hull. The smoke curled upward, light and ghostly. He murmured the litany of gratitude. "Metal, you've got done the Emperor's paintings. Flesh, you've got served your purpose. Can also both be cleansed in fire." We joined in, our voices choppy but earnest. The ritual mattered. It reminded us there has been nonetheless a barrier among us and the thing that waited under the armor. When the prayer ended, the sergeant checked out every people in turn. "This turned into your baptism. You are Tankorn now. Bear in mind what it looks like." None folk spoke back. That nighttime, we camped beside the automobile. The wind carried the sound of distant bombardments like waves breaking towards the brink of the arena. Our rations tasted of ash. The celebs have been hidden behind the smoke, and the light from the fires grew to become the clouds into a ceiling of blood. I could not sleep. Each time I closed my eyes, I noticed flashes the glare of the canyon, silhouettes disintegrating. My ears rang with phantom screams. I wanted to wish, but the words would not come. As an alternative, I sat with my lower back to the hull and listened to the faint tick of cooling steel. It sounded almost like respiration. So, stirred beside me. "You watched they felt whatever?" I looked at him. His face was light, strewn with soot. "I do not know." He nodded slowly, staring into the hearth. "Maybe this is the mercy. Perhaps they felt nothing at all." We failed to speak after that. While sunrise got here once more, we had been ordered ahead. The campaign became just starting, although it already felt eternal. The tank roared to life underneath us, obedient, hungry, and as we rolled toward the next horizon, I realized something had changed. Before that day, I had feared loss of life. After it, I feared survival. They informed us the siege could ultimate every week. They lied. By the point the sun had vanished underneath the choking smog for the 100th time, the phrase vulnerable had lost, which means absolutely. We counted time by using the quantity of shells we fired, the wide variety of times the filters clogged, the variety of corpses we overwhelmed below our treads. The town, if you can nevertheless call it that, became a smash long before we arrived. Dustfall, they named it, even though I suspect that changed into by no means its authentic call. Possibly once it had towers, gardens, even laughter. By the time we reached its outskirts, it became little greater than a graveyard of concrete and ash. The dust came first. Always the dust. It seeped through every crack inside the hull, through every imperfect seal. No matter how regularly we scrubbed the vents, how tightly we sure the filters, it usually located a way in. Nice, gray, endless, sifting through the air till it coated our tongues and gums, stuffed the corners of our eyes, grew to become our skin the shade of degradation. Karen swore he ought to taste the lifeless in it. He wasn't wrong. When we first encircled the town, morale changed into nevertheless excessive, or at least something comparable to it. We still had water, ration paste, a working vox. The sergeant still spoke in complete sentences rather than unmarried, rasping orders. The first bombardment commenced on the second one day. From within the tank, we may want to see the city's silhouette through the periscope, a jagged skyline, black in opposition to a sky thick with dust. The air trembled as our artillery opened hearth. Row upon row of sacred thunder shaking the arena. We joined in, our personal cannon roaring like a wounded god. Every shell we fired vanished into the gray distance, followed through a ripple of light. Then a thunderclap that rolled via the earth like the growl of something massive under the soil. Ours exceeded that manner. Firing, reloading, firing once more. The rhythm became liturgical. Rel muttered the proper of projection each time he loaded a shell, his voice from repetition. Via religion, may additionally this shot fly real. Through flame, might also it burn the unworthy. By the 10th hour, he'd stopped the usage of words. He genuinely kissed the casing before slamming it into place. When night came, no longer that you may inform, the bombardment did not stop. The sky glowed pink from the steady hearth. I don't forget thinking that this became what hell should appear to be. No longer a place of torment, but a horizon that never darkens, burning without stop. At the 5th day, they again hearthed. The first effect struck some meters to our left. The shockwave lifted the tank barely before slamming it back off. Every light inside the cabin flickered. Armor protecting, Karen said, even though his voice shook. Praise the system spirit. The second shell landed nearer. Dust poured through the vents like breath from a corpse's mouth. The sergeant barked orders. Preserve formation. Return fire. So complied. His fingers no longer trembled whilst he fired. They moved with the bloodless precision of addiction. The recoil rocked us time and again until the sensation of motion and violence became indistinguishable. The air inside the tank grew thick with smoke and heat. Sweat stung our eyes. The coolant lines rattled like bones. Whilst we paused to reload, I could hear the sound of affects placing nearby hulls, metal tearing, guys screaming through the vox earlier than their alerts went silent. Out of doors, the sector had grown to be a blizzard of dirt. Visibility dropped to not anything. The periscope showed handiest transferring gray, punctuated with the aid of the quick glow of explosions. Optics are vain, so stated, I cannot see a factor. Then goal by using religion, the sergeant replied. She'll guide your hand. And by some means she did. On every occasion Soth fired blind. We felt the fulfilling concussive echo of a hit through the ground. The tank trembled in approval, as though the gadget's spirit itself purred with pride. By using the third week, the dirt had infiltrated the entirety. Our food came in gray lumps. The water ration tasted of rust. The filters choked hourly. I'd scrape them easy with a knife. However, the residue continually again. Rill evolved a cough, a moist, damn sound that crammed the silence among engine pulses. He tried to cover it. However, the sergeant observed. Preserve your illness to yourself, he stated. The gadget's spirit tolerates no weak spot. Rill smiled weakly. Then she'll should make do. We're all weak in here. The sergeant struck him difficult, backhanded. The sound of the impact became dull against the metal backdrop. Watch your tongue, loader. You speak of holiness with filth. Reed didn't answer. He just wiped the blood from his lip and whispered, Forgive me, Saint Metal. After that, we spoke less. The siege stretched on. Each day changed into the identical cycle. Wake, Fireplace, restore, pray, repeat. Sleep came in stolen fragments, curled against the recent walls of the hull. The engine have become our lullaby, the vibration, our heartbeat. We not prominent among our sweat and the condensation dripping from the ceiling. The air changed into so thick with breath and oil that my skin felt coated in an everlasting sheen. The Vox crackled every now and then, spitting fragments of orders via the static. As soon as I concept, I heard someone screaming for retreat. However, the sergeant muted the channel earlier than I may want to make sense of it. Noise, he said. Don't allow it poison your religion. The outside international ceased to exist. There was most effective the tank, the dust, the countless repetition. I started to dream with my eyes open. On occasion, I noticed faces forming within the filth that clung to the walls, mouths open in silent prayer or accusation. As soon as I reached out to wipe them away, and the condensation streaked crimson beneath my glove. I didn't mention it. Some things are higher left unstated. On the 32nd day, the enemy breached the fringe. They got here through the ruins like shadows, figures half obscene within the dirt, moving with inhuman endurance. The primary signal became the rattle of small fingers' fire against our hull. The pointy ping-ping-ping that sounded nearly delicate compared to the cannon's roar. Close variety, Karen shouted. They're crawling over the wrecks. So swung the turret closer to the sound. The sergeant fed him coordinates via the periscope. Elevation 30, range 50. Confirmed. Hearth. The shell exploded barely 30 m from us. The blast rocked the tank, shaking free a cascade of dust from the ceiling. Via the periscope, I saw bodies flung into the air, dark shapes turning end over cease before vanishing within the smoke. We kept firing till the ground round us became a shifting sea of mud and bone. When the order got here to give up Hearth, the silence that observed was unbearable. All we could hear became the soft ping of cooling steel and the sluggish drip of condensation from the vents. The smell within the tank had modified thicker, fouler, a mixture of device oil and human worry. Weeks succeeded, or perhaps months, I cannot make certain. We misplaced tune of time while the chronometer failed. The lighting fixtures dimmed extra often. The engine grew temperamental, requiring longer and longer rides to begin. The system's spirit became restless. The sergeant ordered us to double our devotions. Twice a day we completed the entire litany, burning incense till the cabin packed with acrid smoke. The fumes made us dizzy, however it calmed the spirit, or so we told ourselves. Ours cough worsened. Blood flecked his lips now. The sergeant refused to open the hatch for medical resource. He's going to stay till the Emperor decrees otherwise, he said. He failed to. Rill died quietly one night, slumped beside the loader's rack. His eyes were open, glassy, his skin gray, because the dust that included him. We sat in silence for a long term earlier than the sergeant subsequently spoke. He served. The gadget's spirit is appeased. What can we do with him? So requested. Depart him where he is. The tank accepts all services. We obeyed. By using morning, the frame had cooled and stiffened. We lashed him an area with software straps to preserve him from transferring when we moved. Karen murmured a prayer as he checked the driver's controls. Blessed be his journey through the gears. The sergeant did not respond. Whilst we started the engine once more, the noise sounded specific, deeper, smoother, almost content. The siege never ended so much because it sincerely dwindled into permanence. The metropolis become long gone, flattened underneath months of shelling. However, we had been still there, still firing, nonetheless breathing recycled air that stank of sweat and sanctity. Dustfall become now not an area. It changed into a circumstance, an illness that inflamed our lungs, our thoughts, our desires. On occasion, I assume we have become part of it. The sergeant stopped marking the days, so stopped speaking altogether. Karen drove with the aid of intuition, eyes one half closed, palms consistent as clockwork. I stored the Vox alive despite the fact that no one replied anymore. The static had its very own type of consolation. One night I heard a voice in it again. Not orders, not interference, just a whisper, faint and gentle. You envy them, don't you? I turned the dial sharply. However, the voice changed into gone. Simplest static remained. Nonetheless, it changed into proper. We envied the lifeless. While the dust eventually settled, if it ever virtually did, the town changed into silent. The order to advance by no means came. The Vox remained dead. The gasoline gauge crept toward empty. The sergeant stood earlier than the shrine, arms clasped. His voice changed into raw from disuse. "The Emperor assessments us," he said. "We bear due to the fact he wills it." No person replied. Karen leaned lower back in his seat, eyes closed. "If this is his will," he muttered, "then mercy is long useless." I desired to tell him to prevent, to take it lower back, but the phrases by no means left my mouth. The hull groaned softly, as although the device had heard him. The lighting flickered as soon as, then steadied, and I swear only for a second, I felt something flow under my boots. A vibration, sluggish and deliberate, like a heartbeat waking beneath layers of dust. They said the siege would closing per week, but I think it's nonetheless happening. Somewhere the dust nevertheless falls. Someplace the tank nonetheless breathes, and we're still interior. The tech priest died on the 39th day of the siege, or possibly the 40th. By way of then, time had curdled right into an unmarried, unbroken hour, one which stretched on all the time, rotting at the rims. He changed into outside when it happened, strolling between the tank lines to bless the machines before dawn. We heard the whine of incoming shells, then the impact, one smooth strike, a geyser of dirt and flame. When it cleared, not anything of him remained, but fragments of pink gown fluttering like torn wings in the wind. The sergeant ordered us to stay sealed inside. "The rights may want to wait," he stated. But even via the armor, I could odor it. That sweet metal-heady scent of vaporized flesh and sanctified oil. The tech priests were our tether to the divine mechanisms that ruled the machine. Without him, we were orphans, children trapped in a cathedral that no longer spoke. The silence that accompanied changed into not peace. It was caution. The first signs and symptoms came quietly. A flicker in the lumen strips, a hesitation in the turret's rotation, a low vibration inside the hull, just like the growl of something restless under the floor. Karen checked the gauges. "Strain's constant," he stated. "Maybe not anything." The sergeant frowned. "The gadget spirit does not suffer nothing. It suffers forget. Begin the invocation." We carried out the rite as pleasant we ought to, repeating the canticle of operation from memory. The words tasted wrong without the priest's voice leading them flat, incomplete. Whilst the engine in the end started out, it did so with a legitimate I'd never heard before. A deep, wet thump, just like the first heartbeat of a factor waking from a protracted sleep. The hull shuddered, and for a moment I swore the air grew hotter, almost pulsing. "She's displeased," so muttered. "She is aware if he's gone. Then we will make her keep in mind our faith," the sergeant said. "Double incense, twice the prayers." We did as ordered. The smoke filled the cabin thick and acrid. It stung the eyes, burned the throat. My lungs ached. However, I stored chanting, the words spilling out like a desperate confession. "Blessed be thy pistons, O vessel of the Emperor. Blessed be thy gears, thy treads, thy hearth. Through our flesh, thou art made complete." The lighting fixtures steadied, the engine purred. For some time, the tank appeared calm again. But that night time, the whispers started. They came from the Vox at the beginning, a faint crackle between static bursts, styles that shouldn't have been there. I used to be half asleep when I heard it, a voice so gentle I almost mistook it for memory. "Are you listening?" I jolted upright. The others stirred, muttering curses. "What is it?" Karen asked. "Something at the Vox?" I said, "A voice." So rubbed his eyes. "You are hearing ghosts." "Maybe," I murmured. But whilst I spoke, the whisper lower back. I bear in mind you. The phrases were skinny, mechanical, spoken no longer through breath, but through vibration. The sergeant turned into unsleeping now. "Shut it down," he ordered. I cut energy to the Vox. The whisper ceased, leaving handiest the low hum of the engine and the gradual creak of the hull. "Just feedback," Karen said, even though he didn't sound satisfied. The sergeant checked out me. "Say not anything of this to the others. The system's spirit listens. It rewards religion, not worry." I nodded, but I could not shake the feeling that the machine had spoken now not as metaphor, but as truth. The subsequent morning, the turret refused to show. No amount of guide override, no coaxing from S, no invocations ought to make it move. The targeting aspects flickered with erratic runes, all meaningless. "She's combating us," Karen muttered. The sergeant barked him into silence. "She is trying out us. Recite the benediction of alignment." We chanted till our throats have been roared. However, the turret remained frozen. Finally, the sergeant decided. Blood providing, he stated. S blinked. Sir, she calls for sacrifice. The Omnisia accepts flesh and region of oil whilst necessary. No person moved. The sergeant drew his combat blade and looked at each folks in turn. The priest's loss of life has left her untethered. We can repair balance with the aid of devotion or by way of struggling. I do not know why I did it. Perhaps I used to be truly worn out. Possibly I wanted to consider that the machine definitely cared that it demanded which means from our misery. I held out my hand. Use mine. The sergeant nodded as soon as. Devoted. He drew the blade throughout my palm. The reduce turned into shallow, however sharp. Blood welled up, heat and shiny in opposition to the gray dirt. It dripped onto the deck, onto the threshold of the coetator's shrine. The moment it touched the steel, the turret groaned. A low grinding sound stuffed the cabin. The gun shifted, slow before everything, then smoother, aligning with the external coordinates. Karen gasped. It is working. The sergeant sheathed his blade. See, she is appeased. She recollects us now. I wrapped my hand in a strip of fabric and stated nothing. But inside the hum of the engine, below the pulse of the machinery, I swore I ought to hear something new. A rhythm faint, however alive, a heartbeat. After that, the machine grew, responsive. While Karen prayed before ignition, the engine started out instantly. Whilst soft muttered curses, the bulk shuddered violently sufficient to knock him backward. The sergeant became nearly devout in his attention. He wiped clean the shrine day by day, polished the brass with the edge of his sleeve, whispered non-public prayers that none folks had been allowed to listen. The tank's mood changed together with his moods. If he turned into calm, the gadget purred like a happy beast. If he was angry, the engine roared and the lights flickered. If he despaired, the air grew less warm, heavy with static. We commenced to believe that it may feel us, that the bond between metallic and flesh had gone each ways. One evening, as we sat in silence, the Vox got here alive once more, no longer with whispers this time, however with a low, rhythmic hum just like the drone of remote machinery. Then got here a sound nearly like respiration, gradual and planned, so stiffened. Tell me that's interference. I grew to become the dials. It's coming from in the machine. The sergeant's face became unreadable. Don't contact it. The sound deepened, vibrating through the hall. The ground below us appeared to transport. Not a lot, just a diffused pulse. Then got here the voice. I am no longer gone. It became the identical mechanical tone, but stronger now, packed with resonance that made the metallic itself vibrate. I am the iron that endures. The flesh is fleeting. Karen whispered a prayer below his breath. The sergeant advanced. We hear you, Holy One. We serve. The lighting dimmed briefly, then flared. The engine revved without contact, then feed me. The voice diminished. The hum remained. None people spoke for a long time. While we ultimately did, the sergeant's voice changed into quiet. Tomorrow, we ride once more. The next conflict got here without caution. Enemy artillery struck from the ruins, sharp, specific, relentless. The ground shook underneath us as we rolled forward, dirt and particles cascading over the hull. So known as out targets, his voice cracking with exhaustion. Karen drove through the chaos half blind. The engine screamed, the air full of smoke and sweat. And through it all, I felt at the pulse of the system's spirit robust and rhythmic beneath the cacophony. While Soth's trigger jammed, the turret moved on its own, adjusting goal. The cannon fired before he ought to even name for clearance. The shot struck real, tearing a crater into the enemy's flank. The tank howled because it fired, a sound like triumph or hunger. We fought for hours, driven no longer through command, however via something deeper. Each effect, every explosion, every demise outdoor fed the system's will. When the struggle sooner or later ended, we have been nonetheless alive. The sergeant stood earlier than the shrine, his armor smeared with soot and blood. The spirit protects its faithful, he said softly. I regarded around at the others. Karen's eyes have been glazed. S's fingers nonetheless trembled, and my personal arms had been slick with dried blood. Included perhaps, but at what price? That night time, I could not sleep. The others snored softly. There our bodies slumped towards the hull. The air changed into thick with the heady scent of iron and sweat. I sat via the shrine, looking at the faint gleam of the icon. Are you awake? I whispered. The hull creaked in response. "I do not recognize you," I said. "Are you alive, or are we just mad?" Silence, then faintly a vibration below my hand. "Alive," it stated, even though no phrases were spoken. The sound turned into extra felt, then heard a resonance that settled in my bones. I pressed my bloodied palm to the shrine. "Then why do you want us?" The solution came like static. "All flesh serves." I withdrew my hand, shivering. The air felt less warm suddenly. The shrine's steel was warm to touch, pulsing faintly. In that second, I realized that I no longer feared the device. I revered it, and that turned into the start of my damnation. By way of mourning, the sergeant introduced a brand new ritual. Each sunrise, earlier than ignition, one of us might provide blood at the shrine, a small cut, a drop only. He said it saved the spirit calm, that it ensured obedience. None. People protested. The concept felt herbal, almost comforting. The primary offering turned into Karen's. He drew his blade without hesitation, cutting throughout his thumb and pressing it to the brass. The engine commenced smoother than it ever had. All of us smiled, although none people knew why. From then on, the road between devotion and dependency vanished. We not saw the tank as a device. It became our chapel, our confessor, our God. Whilst the engine idled, we whispered to it. While the vents hissed, we listened. It replied in kind. Lights flickered in rhythm to our prayers. The Vox hummed with approval. The turret became faster, smoother, deadlier. We had come to be one. And somewhere deep inner, I suppose it commenced to like us inside the way a predator loves the hand that feeds it. When we ultimately rolled out again, the sergeant gave the order, now not as command, but as benediction. Let the devoted journey. The engine roared, the ground shook, and the tank surged forward, slicing through the ruins like a beast unleashed. As the cannon thundered, as guys screamed and burned outside, I felt an atypical peace settle over me. The spirit whispered through the hull. "We are whole." And for the first time, I assumed it. Superb. Permits descend into the next layer of smash. Here starts off evolved your next confession. Asterisk asterisk. Bankruptcy 6, the burning plane. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. First individual narration. Grim darkish tone to 2,000 plus words. Asterisk. We reach the aircraft at sunrise, even though dawn is simply too kind a word. The horizon was a smear of ember-cold haze. The sky bruised with smoke. The land itself regarded wounded. Black soil cracked open, bleeding hearth from beneath. They stated it had as soon as been farmland, long before the shells fell, earlier than the rivers ran dry, and the sky have become a ceiling of ash. Now it changed into nothing, however, a charred expanse affected by wrecks and bones. Some human, a few system, most unrecognizable. The order changed into easy. Asterisk. Advance. Cleanse. Keep. The Emperor's words filtered through static, spoken through a voice that had longed for the reason that forgotten the sound of mercy. Our tank, our God, responded with a roar. The engine's growl rolled through the hull, like thunder trapped internal a coffin. Every bolt rattled. Each plate sang its grim litany. We were sealed interior for goodbye, that the sound no longer nervous us. It changed into the sound of cause, of inevitability. Karen drove with both palms, gripping the controls as even though in prayer. His eyes have been crimson from sleeplessness, but his expression changed into calm, nearly serene. The ground burns ahead, he murmured as if reporting weather. Then drive through it, the sergeant stated. The Emperor's road is by no means cool. We laughed at that, no longer with humor, however, because there has been not anything else left to do. The system's spirit purred underneath us, eager. I could experience it through the deck plates, a vibration that pulsed in rhythm with our hearts. We had lengthy, when you consider that, stopped questioning whether the spirit led us or we it. We had been one now, a single creature of metal and sinew. The first impact came before we noticed the enemy. A shell screamed beyond close, sufficient to rattle the optics. Dust rained from the ceiling. Bearing west, so referred to as, I have got muzzle flashes in the ruins. The sergeant leaned over the scope. Variety 800, maybe less. Then supply them is mild. The cannon fired, and the sound swallowed the arena. Outdoor, something exploded. A flare of white-hot brilliance that seared the inner edges of the viewport. Through the haze, I stuck a glimpse of figures scattering, burning, disintegrating. The air full of ash that drifted down like snow. We fired again and again. The cringe hammered my spine, the vibration numbing my hands, the scent of propellant blended with sweat, steel, and the faint sweetness of cooked flesh. Karen muttered the instance's driver's benediction times below his breath. Steerage us through the smoke. His voice become calm. Mechanical is more than. Through religion, I steer. Through will I endure. Via steel, I'm introduced. Every phrase felt like a heartbeat. Each shot a breath. We overwhelmed the enemy beneath our treads without seeing their faces. They had been shadows within the smoke, silhouettes that broke aside underneath stress. So started to weep as he fired, even though he never stopped. His tears cut streaks via the grime on his cheeks. They may not prevent coming, he whispered. They just preserve standing up again. Then keep knocking them down, the sergeant said. His voice turned into remote, reverent. The Emperor loves patience. With the aid of midday, the aircraft become a furnace. The warmth in the tank climbed beyond survivable. Our uniform stuck to our skin. The recycled air smelled like a corpse left too long within the Sunday. Karen stripped off his gloves. His fingers roar and blistered. Ventilation's failing, he croaked. She's running too hot. The sergeant grew to become toward me. Adjust the air float. I checked the controls. The dials flickered erratically, readings spiking and falling at random. The system's spirit was stressed again, hungry. She wishes blood, I said before I realized I'd spoken aloud. No person puzzled me. The sergeant simplest nodded once. Then feed her. I unwrapped my palm, nonetheless scarred from the last presenting, and drew the blade once more. The cut changed into less difficult this time. Practiced, the blood welled fast, darkish within the purple light. I pressed my hand to the shrine. The hull trembled in response. The vents groaned, liberating a sluggish breath of cooler air. The temperature dropped some tears, enough for us to breathe again. Karen exhaled shakily. Bless her call. She is merciful, the sergeant stated. However, mercy was not what I felt pulsing below the steel. It became pride. We advanced deeper into the plain. All around us, the arena burned. The floor was cracked and molten in places, strewn with rivers of sparkling slag. The air shimmered with heat distortion, blurring the horizon right into a mirage of shifting flame. Within the distance, wrecked tanks lay half-buried, their hulls twisted like carcasses left to rot. Some nevertheless burned from within, fires fed with the aid of leaking promethium. Once we handed what remained of an infantry regiment, charred silhouettes frozen mid-step. Weapons melted into their arms. The sight did not even register anymore. They have been scenery now. S commenced to snicker quietly in the beginning, then louder till it had become a harsh, damaged sound. What's funny? Karen requested without looking up. They told us this international turned into cursed. So said between breaths. They had been right, but it is no longer cursed due to them. It's cursed due to us. The sergeant's hand shot out, hanging him throughout the face. Maintain your tongue. So spat blood onto the deck. You cannot prevent it. You sense it, too. The tank's feeding. It's the cannon fired again earlier than he ought to finish. The sergeant's hand changed into already on the rune. The shot tore via the ruins in advance, silencing the entirety. Later on, the sergeant grew to become again calm once more. She needs consciousness, he stated. No longer doubt. STH didn't speak once more. That night, if it was night at all, we made camp amidst the wreckage of what was once a town gate. The walls had collapsed into blackened stone teeth jutting closer to the sky. The air became thick with smoke and the faint consistent patter of falling ash. We didn't go out the tank. There has been not anything out of doors really worth touching. Instead, we sat within the half-darkness, paying attention to the engine's low hum. It no longer sounded mechanical. It sounded alive like the breath of a snoozing giant. The sergeant lit a stick of incense and placed it before the shrine. We are chosen, he said softly. The others have burned away, however we undergo. That is motive. So Karen nodded, eyes closed. She keeps us alive for a cause. Soth stared on the ground. Or due to the fact she likes the flavor. The sergeant disregarded him. He became to me. The spirit favors you. You listen her clearer than we do. What does she want? I hesitated. I did not want to mention it. However, the reality came anyway. More. Greater. The sergeant smiled faintly. Then we will provide her more. When the offensive resumed, we had been at the tip of the spear. We drove into the firestorm without hesitation. Artillery rained from each sides, flashes of white and orange, thunder rolling across the plain. The tank shuddered under each near leave out, however the hull held. The Spirit roared via the engine, using us quicker. The air interior filled with the scream of the machine, the hiss of hydraulics, the rhythmic chant of the sergeant is greater than steel is energy. Religion is fireplace. Flesh is nothing. We repeated it with him until the phrases lost all which means. The arena outside dissolved into smoke and movement. Enemies emerged simplest to disappear underneath our fire. We became instruments of annihilation, each shot an act of devotion. The Spirit spoke between volleys, her voice a vibration that crammed the cabin. Asterisk. Do you see how they fall? How without problems they spoil. That is purity. Asterisk. I felt something interior me crack. No longer from worry, however from awe. We have been killing within the call of a god made from iron, and for the first time it felt holy. When the smoke cleared, the plane changed into unrecognizable. Flames nonetheless danced throughout the floor, feeding on the oily soil. The air shimmered with warmth and chemical residue. The wind carried the sound of crackling fire and distant screams that dwindled too fast to be actual. We stopped amid the smash, surrounded by using corpses that still smoldered. The sergeant stood earlier than the shrine, his face illuminated with the aid of the flickering lighting fixtures. The Emperor's will is fulfilled here, he said. We're the hammer that moves. We're his fire. S eventually broke. He slammed his fist against the wall. Forstall sang his call. You observed he watches this? You observed he cares. The sergeant grew to become slowly, his expression unreadable. He cares via the gadget. Via her. So laughed bitterly. Then she's no saint. She's a daemon. The lighting flickered violently. The engine roared unprompted. The hull vibrated with unexpected furious lifestyles. So stumbled returned wide-eyed. I did not suggest. The cannon fired. None of us touched the controls. The drawback threw us in opposition to the partitions. Through the viewport, I saw a determined walking one of the survivors from the final engagement simply before the shell hit. The explosion turned him right into a flash of purple mist. The tank fell silent again. The air smelled of ozone and burning. The sergeant crossed himself with oil-stained hands. Blasphemy, replied, so stared at the smoking barrel. That wasn't me. However, the sergeant simplest smiled. She forgives. Serve her, and she will shield. We stayed on the aircraft for 3 more days, though we had no orders. The Vox was lifeless once more, its best sound. The faint static that on occasion formed itself into phrases I failed to need to understand. We burned everything we saw. Outposts, wrecks, the stays of villages that could as soon as have been houses. The Spirit guided our purpose. The sergeant stopped consulting maps. We did not need them anymore. With the aid of the end, the sky itself appeared to bleed. The ash fell thicker, coating the tank in gray that became darker with each mile. Interior, the shrine pulsed with mild that no longer got here from the lumen strips. I no longer felt like I was sitting inside the tank. I felt like I used to be interior a dwelling aspect, and it became inner me. That night time, as we idled a few of the fires, I whispered to the Spirit, what are we now? The solution came like a sigh via the vents. Selected, certain, everlasting. And even though every part of me screamed that it changed into wrong, I smiled due to the fact eternity as a minimum meant no quit. Understood. While circulate into the penultimate descent, the end earlier than the cease. Asterisk. Chapter 7. The Ultimate Shell. Asterisk asterisk. First individual narration. Grimdark tone to 2,000 plus phrases. Asterisk. The burning aircraft bled into the hills, and the hills into the ridge. Beyond it waited the final protection line of something enemies still lived. The map turned into gone. The Vox became useless. Command now not spoke. However, the sergeant told us the Emperor's will had not changed. Asterisk increased till all movement stops. By using then we had 1 shell left. The magazines were empty. The racks stripped bare. The closing shell rested in its cradle like an idol, engraved with a dozen cracked purity seals that fluttered each time the tank exhaled. Ours blood nevertheless stained the loader's rack. No person had bothered to easy it. We informed ourselves that it thrilled the Spirit. Karen turned into coughing up soot. S's eyes had sunk deep into his skull, dual hollows rimmed in purple. The sergeant moved slower now, however his voice in no way faltered. The tank itself regarded more potent than ever, its engine heartbeat regular, its warmth regular, the metallic around us buzzing faintly like a residing throat. We had ended up a part of her absolutely, and she or he folks. The ridge rose before us like the lip of a wound. The enemy waded past it, though I by no means knew who they had been anymore. That they had no faces, no insignia, simply motion in the smoke and flashes of muzzle mild. The plane at the back of us burned, and the sky changed into a dome of moving scarlet. The sergeant stood under the hatch, periscope lenses reflecting the firelight. "We reached the crest," he said. "Then we cease it. The Emperor witnesses all deeds, even the ones completed in silence." Karen gunned the throttle. The engine roared its ascent. The climb began. The treads chewed via ash and bone alike. The hull tilted ahead, groaning with stress. Via the viewport, I saw nothing however fireplace mild and drifting embers. The air inner grew warmer with every meter. Soth manned the gun, one hand resting at the shell as although touching a relic. "One left," he stated softly. "You believe you studied she knows?" The sergeant failed to solution. "She constantly knows," Karen whispered. "She can flavor it." I attempted the vox again out of reflex. Static. Then faintly a voice buried deep inside, it like some things speak me from the bottom of a grave. Asterisk. "Do now not fear the stop. It is the beginning." Asterisk. I shut it off immediately, but the words remained in my head, echoing like tinnitus. The ridge erupted before we reached the top. A shell struck close to our left flank, throwing the tank sideways. The hull slammed into the ground with a screech of tortured metal. Warning runes flickered across each display. Karen fought the controls, teeth gritted, tracks retaining, force stabilizers at 60. The sergeant barked orders via the chaos. "Return fireplace. Fire at will." So cursed, slamming his fist towards the loading lever. "No ammo. I told you one shell left." "Then make it count." The sergeant roared. We crawled up the very last incline, treads grinding via slag and bone. Incoming rounds pinged against the hull, each effect a hammer blow. One round cracked an imaginative and prescient port. Dust and smoke poured through the space. So loaded the very last shell. His palms trembled, but the movement became reverent. He pressed his forehead to the casing for a quick second, whispering a prayer. I couldn't hear. The sergeant seemed down at me. "Box check." Nothing however static. He nodded slowly. Then we ceased it alone. The ridge crest seemed before us. Black silhouettes shifting beyond it. Masses of them. Figures swarming like insects final and via the haze. Karen shouted, "They're too close." S swung the turret, tracking as fine he could via the smoke. His voice broke as he called out, "Goal locked. Range. Point blank." The sergeant hesitated for half a heartbeat as though savoring it. Then Hearth. The cannon roared. Mild swallowed the whole lot. The draw back threw us backward. My enamel cracked collectively with the pressure. The arena outdoor vanished into white. Heat crammed the cabin. A pure searing wave that washed over us, stripping breath and thought alike. The explosion sound failed to attain us right away. For a moment, there has been best silence, a void. Then it got here an all-eating scream of tearing metallic and shattering earth. The hull buckled. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The lighting burst separately. The sergeant fell in opposition to the shrine, his face half-lit by firelight. "Praise," he started. However, the phrase died in his throat. Karen's controls melted underneath his fingers. He didn't even scream. He just stared unblinking as smoke rose from his arms. S was guffawing again, his voice high and broken. "You notice it? You see it? She's free." The hull screamed. I mean that actually at instances screamed asterisk. Metallic would not make that sound. No longer, even if it tears. It turned into the sound of something alive being ripped open. The machine's spirit roared via every panel, each circuit, every breath. The vox came alive, spewing static that formed one half words, half of moan asterisk. "You're mine. You are mine. You are mine." Asterisk. I tried to reach the hatch, but the cope with burned my hand. The metallic glowed crimson. Smoke stuffed the cabin. My eyes watered until I noticed nothing however light. The sergeant changed into on his knees, clutching the icon against his chest. His armor was melting. Glory be. The heat swallowed the rest. Karen slumped ahead over the controls, his flesh fusing to them. The smell became insufferable. Burnt oil and pores and skin and incense all mixed into one choking cloud. S stored guffawing until his voice dissolved into coughing. Then silence. The shrine burst into flame. The aquila melted. The blood at the partitions bubbled and ran. Someplace under the noise, under the fireplace, I heard the spirit whisper again. Isk, you supplied me religion. Now offer me yourselves. Asterisk. The hull began to close. I do not know how else to explain it. The interior regarded to shrink, plates twisting inward as if the tank had been breathing in deeply, drawing us in. I tried to scream, however the air became gone. Light, warmness, then nothing. I do not know how lengthy I drifted in that vacancy. Time had no that means there. My most effective knew the sound, the slow rhythmic thump of the engine nonetheless alive someplace beyond me. Once I opened my eyes, the entirety became darkish. The tank turned into silent. The fires had died. The world out of doors changed into gone. No sound, no wind, no voices. Best the faint glow of the coetator rooms nonetheless pulsing like a heartbeat. I used to be the simplest one left. The others have been absorbed. Maybe I could experience them within the partitions, in the vibrations, within the whispers that moved through the pipes like breath. I touched the shrine. The steel was cold now, but below it something moved. We're one, asterisk, stated the voice, and I understood. The tank had drunk us as it had continually promised to. I attempted to move. My hand spoke back slowly as though pushing through oil. My breath rasped in opposition to the inner of the rebreather. Each inhalation delivered the taste of ash and iron. The vox clicked faintly. Any units reply. The voice became faint, distant, one in every of ours. Perhaps though I couldn't inform anymore. I reached for the mic, my palms trembling. That is static swallowed the phrases. Then below the interference, I heard any other sound laughter. Now not human metallic echoing through the frequencies. No more orders. Handiest me. Asterisk. The vox died. I sat inside the darkish for what felt like hours. The hull creaked occasionally, expanding and contracting like lungs. The odor of burnt flesh had diminished into something almost sweet. I spoke aloud, though there has been nobody left to listen. Is this victory? The spirit's solution was soft, nearly kind. This is for all time. And in that second, I believed her due to the fact out of doors the warfare would preserve. The guns might roar, the dust might fall. However interior this metallic tomb. Time had ended. When the dawn finally came, or what handed for sunrise, the light leaked via the cracks in the armor. Vulnerable and colorless, the hatch might now not open. I failed to try again. I pressed my hand to the wall. It was warm, pulsing faintly. Someplace deep in the gadget, the engine began to hum again. The vibration traveled through the ground into my bones till I felt it in my teeth, in my heartbeat. The spirit become nevertheless alive, nevertheless hungry, and I was part of her now. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 8. Entombed in metallic asterisk, 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 first-person narration to 2,000 plus words. Grim darkish confessional tone asterisk. I woke to darkness, no longer the kind that includes sleep, however the deeper kind, the darkness that has weight, that presses down like earth on a grave. There has been no sound before everything, no movement, no breath, but my personal. The engine had fallen silent at remaining, and the absence of its heartbeat felt obscene. For a protracted while, I failed to circulate. I could not. My limbs have been heavy, the air too thick to swallow. I thought perhaps I used to be lifeless. If simplest that have been actual. The first sensation to return turned into pain dull, constant everywhere. The type that doesn't come from a wound, but from the frame itself, rejecting what it has come to be. My pores and skin itched beneath the filth. My joints act like rusting hinges. Every inhale introduced the taste of oil and iron. The smell of burnt flesh that had soaked so deeply into the air it had grown to be part of it. I attempted to talk. The sound became a rasp, more breath than word. Howdy. No solution, simplest the faint groan of settling steel, as though the tank became listening. I lay there for what might have been hours or days. The light that filtered via the cracked lumen strips flickered dimly, fading with every pulse. Once I eventually moved, the sound startled me, my very own armor scraping in opposition to the deck. I sat up slowly. The cabin become blackened, walls strewn with soot, the shrine become a melted shape of brass and ash. Our bodies were long past. Now not times absent asterisk. Gone. No bone. No flesh. Just impressions on the deck, plating wherein that they had fallen. Burned outlines that flaked away once I touched them. I must have wept. I failed to. Instead, I listened. Someplace deep in the hollow beyond the bulkheads, there was a sound, faint, rhythmic, a heartbeat. The system's spirit become nonetheless alive. I do not forget standing. However, I have to have due to the fact unexpectedly I used to be at the shrine again. The brass had melted and re-hardened into an ordinary warped remedy. Something that might once have been an aquila, now equivalent to a cranium with outstretched wings. I reached out. The steel became warm. The warmth pulsed. Asterisk. You live. Asterisk, said the voice. It wasn't sound as lots as vibration. The hull itself talking via my bones. Yes, I whispered. I think so. Asterisk. You are mine. Asterisk. The phrases had been neither command nor comfort. They have been fact. I desired to disclaim it. I desired to scream. But all that came out changed into a low, damaged giggle. Sure, I said again. I suppose I'm. The tank sighed, metallic transferring, plates contracting. The air vents hissed softly, freeing a breath that smelled of incense and blood. Asterisk. Precise. Asterisk, it stated. Asterisk. We take into account together. Asterisk. The Vox hummed lower back to existence sometime later. I do not know how lengthy I'd been sitting there. Minutes, hours, an entire life. Static crammed the air. Then fragments of sound. A voice, distant and cold, filtered through the interference. Region command. All armor units reply. Casualties general. Quarter. It dwindled, changed by another voice. One I knew. Karen, now not. Alive. Now not pretty dead. Power steady. He whispered through the static. Bless stress, bless tune. I iced up. Karen. Silence. Then S's voice joined his faint, overlapping. Target locked. Elevation 30. Hearth. Their phrases came and went in fragments. Echoes of reminiscence replaying ad infinitum via the Vox. The sound twisted collectively till it had become a refrain of ghosts. I desired to close it off, however I could not. The transfer had fused. The spirit spoke once more, low and amused. Asterisk, they continue to be. All flesh serves. You killed them, I said. I saved them. I felt my throat tighten. Why? Because you requested for eternity. And that I remembered the oath, the prayers, the blood. All the times we begged for patience, for survival, for purpose. The tank had simplest given what we would ask for. At some point, I found out I may want to no longer feel my legs. I seemed down and noticed why. The deck plating had changed. The seams had closed around my boots. The steel fused to the greaves of my armor. It had grown round me like scar tissue. Once I tried to drag free, the hull resisted. A sound rose in reaction, something between a growl and a sigh. Please, I whispered. Be nonetheless. Asterisk, the voice stated. You are domestic. And the more it spoke, the extra its tone changed from the flat drone of equipment to something almost human, acquainted. It became the sergeant's voice now. You swore obedience, it said. You promised your existence to the hull. I shook my head. I did not mean. The walls pulsed round me, the lights flickering. Asterisk, which means is for the residing. You're part of the device now. Asterisk. I attempted to scream, however the air tasted of rust. The hull vibrated under my skin, through my bones, into my mind. And then I heard them again. The voices of my crew whispering from the metal. Power constant. Variety confirmed. Hearth. Their phrases were monotone, limitless, like a prayer without beginning or quit. The spirit's tone softened. See, you aren't on my own. Asterisk. I pressed my arms against the hull. The warmth there felt alive, pulsing in rhythm with my very own heartbeat. For a second, I could not inform which become which. Days surpassed, or possibly weeks. The out-of-doors whirled back in glimpses via the viewport. Dirt storms, the occasional flicker of remote hearth, no movement of lifestyles. The Vox whispered new voices, on occasion other regiments, different wars. None close to sufficient to matter. They got here and went like ghosts crossing through static. I commenced to talk again to them. Sometimes words, on occasion handiest breath. I do not know in the event that they heard. I don't know if everyone did, but the spirit listened. It advised me matters of the wars that came earlier than whilst it had carried other crews, other names. of the worlds it had burned, the prayers it had been fed. They usually asked for the identical element. It said asterisk, to be remembered, to be everlasting. And so I deliver them this asterisk. Are there others like you? I asked. Asterisk. Anyone are like me. Everybody are one asterisk. I concept approximately that for a long term. Someplace throughout the endless void of conflict, other tanks were whispering the equal words to their useless. I don't sleep anymore. The tank would not permit it. Every time I start to waft, it fills the silence with recollections. Mine, theirs, its own. I see the aircraft burning once more. The dirt, the siege, the oath. I odor the incense, pay attention to gunfire, feel the shudder of flinch in my ribs, and continually, constantly the whisper. You asked for all time. Every so often when the wind out of doors shifts, I listen echoes of warfare, remote artillery, the rattle of chains. Maybe it's actual. Maybe it is only the tank dreaming. Either manner, I live unsleeping and listen. The hull is converting again. What became once bloodless iron now seems like flesh, warm, pliant, trembling after I touch it. My gauntlets have fused to my fingers. The metal has grown over my skin in locations. Skinny as wax. I will experience the modern day of power flowing through it, pulsing like blood. The spirit says it's a blessing. Asterisk, you are getting. It tells me, you're losing weak point. You're the vessel now. Threat. I not argue. The ache fades once I be given it. After I near my eyes, I will see via the walls. Not with sight, however with cognizance. I feel the tank's tracks resting against the earth, the wind pushing dust towards its aspects, the sluggish corrosion spreading throughout the armor like lichen. I sense the worms under the soil. I sense the rot. It's lovely. I don't know what year it's for. I don't know if the warfare ended. On occasion, I pay attention engines in the distance, new ones, younger ones. They bypass close to, then fade, none stop. Possibly they think this tank is a destroy, a relic to some distance gone. They're proper in a manner. However, every so often when they skip, the Vox comes alive only for a second. The spirit speaks via me. Develop asterisk. And I pay attention their engines answer. The conflict continues. Once I try to don't forget my call. Now not the rank, now not the carrier variety. The Times name asterisk. The only I had earlier than the oath. Before the metallic, it is long past. The tank took it. Or perhaps I gave it willingly. The spirit calls me instance's voice asterisk. It says I'm the mouth through which it prays. That every confession I make becomes any other bolt in its frame, some other hymn in its countless liturgy. From time to time, I wonder if there had been others before me who served the equal cause voices that spoke to it when no one else remained. If there had been, they're nevertheless here. I will feel them inside the hull, whispering with me in a choir that in no way ends. I suppose the sun has died. The mild through the viewport is weaker each day. The sky outside is gray, unchanging. No birds, no wind, handiest the dirt. The spirit says this is peace. The flesh world fades. The system endures. Asterisk. I believe it now. The wars will end. The Imperium will disintegrate. The celebrities themselves will burn out. However, the tank will remain. It will sit here beneath the ash, dreaming, whispering, looking ahead to the next pilgrim to discover it. And once they do, I will greet them through the Vox. They'll assume it's Miles the spirit speak me. Perhaps it will be. I used to worry being forgotten. That became the worst sin a man should imagine. Demise in silence with no one left to talk his call. However, now I apprehend. Being remembered is worse. Memory is the chain that binds. It keeps you here. Half of alive, one half machine. Praying to an engine that in no way stops hungering. The Emperor is some distance away. The spirit is near. And I am part of it now forever. I hear footsteps sometimes. Perhaps they're real. Maybe they are the echoes of people who got here earlier then. They flow across the hull. Slow plant. The dirt shifts above me. Asterisk. They're coming. The spirit whispers. For me? I ask. For us? I almost smile. The hatch cacks overhead. Mild spills via a hairline crack, cold and sterile. I listen muffled voices, young, eager, ignorant. An old sample. One says, still sealed. Should we open it? Every other asks. Sure, the spirit says via my mouth. Open it. They can't pay attention to me, but they may quickly. Outside, the war nonetheless grinds on. Internal, I wait. The engine stirs again faintly, as though dreaming of motion. The shrine glows pink within the dark. And when the next group climbs inside, once they kneel before the altar and whisper the oath of metal, I'll be there listening, coaching, becoming. The tank is eternal. The spirit is eternal. And now so am I, entombed in metallic forever. We manor DOA, they may discover this tank in the future, perhaps buried under dirt and damage. They'll scrape away the rust and paint the Aquila a brand new. They may name it a relic, a survivor of holy battle. They will climb internal mild the incense and whisper the prayers. They will in no way recognize that I'm nevertheless here, listening, ready, that the hull isn't empty, that the spirit still breathes, that the last shall become now not the ultimate loss of life.